All right, let's go ahead and get started with being where federal buyers search. There's more than 100,000 buyers, federal buyers, searching for small businesses just like yours, right? But if you're not where they're looking, then how can they possibly find you? They're not going to be able to find you, right? Makes sense? Today's training is about the number one market research tool that federal buyers use. It's the most boring tool that's out there, but it also is the most used tool. And you need to make sure you're there. I watch small businesses spend way too much money. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars on their website, right? A lot of money and a lot of time on trying to make their website this perfect art-winning or award-winning website. But that's not where buyers look. Buyers don't go there looking for sellers. Buyers find sellers and then they follow up on your website to learn more, right? Federal buyers use the Dynamic Small Business Search Tool, or DSBS, to find sellers. When they find those sellers, inside there is your website, and they'll go click to learn more about your services and your products, etc. But they do that after they find you. They don't use your website to find you. And so that's really important to keep in mind. If that's what federal buyers are using, DSBS, right, then why aren't you making sure that DSBS is just complete as it can be, completely filled out, and then also rocking so that when a buyer looks at it, they go, man, this company I want on my short list. In today's training, I'm going to give you tips exactly for this, how to review and then update your dynamic small business search profile so that buyers can find you easier. This is not a long task. In fact, at the end of this training, I'm going to tell you exactly what I recommend you go do. And the activity takes 2 or 3 minutes to fix it, to just get to a good enough state. Take an hour or 2 hours at most. And that's the difference between somebody finding you or not. Will you go make that change? I hope you will. That's what we're going to talk about today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is making sure that you have a complete profile in the Dynamic Small Business Search Tool. Before we get started, do me a favor, help buyers remember who you are. Put your company name into the chat. Put 2 or 3 keywords that describe your company's core competencies so the buyers, so me, and so people who are in the community can remember who you are. Finally, before we get started, I want to just say thank you to our sustaining members. We're not funded by the government or large primes. We're self-funded. We're funded by people like you and me. We make these trainings possible for small businesses all around the country. And so on their behalf, I just wanted to say thank you to the sustaining members. Okay, I'm going to go through pretty much 3 main sections that are in your Dynamic Small Business Search profile, so your DSBS profile. But I wanted to begin with just saying, what is DSBS, right? I've been talking about it for 5 years, and it has not diminished in importance in my mind for small businesses, right? It's unique to small businesses. Large businesses do not use the Dynamic Small Business Search profile or tool, right? I want to talk about what it is and how it's used. So the first thing to keep in mind, and I'm just going back to the basics, right, is when you want to become a government contractor, when you want to sell to the government, you must register in SAM, right? System for Awards Management. You must have a SAM registration. Whether you're a small business or a large business or a nonprofit organization, it doesn't matter. You have to be in SAM, right? So that's the first primary registration for all businesses that want to sell to the federal government. The SBA created a tool called the Dynamic Small Business Search Tool and integrated it with SAM. So the two of them work together. They call them supplemental pages, and what they're supplementing is your SAM profile. So your SAM profile is really bare. It's just saying, what NAICS codes do you have, what's your address, things like that. And then small business or the DSBS pages, those have a lot more information describing actually your core competencies so that when buyers are looking for you, they can see a profile. And that tool, again, is only used for the small businesses. DSBS is only used by small businesses. And so SAM and DSBS make up your small business profile. DSBS is the #1 market research tool for federal buyers in federal agencies, right? It's suggested within the FAR. So it's in the law when the Federal Acquisition Regulation, when buyers, market researchers, et cetera, are looking through on, hey, how can I do market research to go out to industry? In there, SAM and DSBS are where the FAR suggests to new buyers or market researchers where to go look for small businesses like you. Well, if the FAR and the training material the buyers are getting is telling them to look in DSBS, then you want to make sure you're looking there. It is the number one market research tool fundamentally because it's the single source of businesses that are selling to the government, in particular small businesses. Industry also looks in there, right? So people are looking for teammates. They often go in. All of the people I work with, customers, when they come to me and they say, hey, I'm looking for a company that does risk management framework or they do elevator servicing. Do you know anybody? And obviously, if I know somebody, I'll make a referral. But what I tell them to do is to go into DSBS and look there. And so large businesses know this. And they teach their own folks, hey, you can go in, but also small businesses when they're looking for teaming partners. There's something called similarly situated entities where two companies that are 8As, for example, could go after an opportunity together and cover down on the 51% so they could give another teaming partner 49%. Well, some of the ways you find each other is through DSBS because you can go in there and find companies based on, are you a woman-owned or HUBZone firm? Do you have these NAICS? Are you saying that your core competency is this? So DSBS is used by industry partners as well to find companies like yours. And then the final group of people who use it in a broad way are supporters, right? That's just what I call them at the moment. But think about the PTAC as an example. Yes, they're the APEC Accelerator now. But the PTACs, right? Those PTAC counselors, they know about DSBS. They go into DSBS when they're looking for businesses, if they're trying to help some of their clients find partners to team up with. If they're working with federal agencies that are nearby in their geographic region, they might go into DSBS to help those agencies find small businesses. People like me, I'm a supporter of the small business industry, right? Any of us who are coaches, consultants, we might look into DSBS to find a bunch of businesses that are out there. And so it's really important to keep that in mind. The dynamic small business search and SAM profile, your small business profile, another way it is used is it's fed in to supplier portals. More often than not, it's large prime contractors, their supplier portals. So if you register in Northrop Grumman and you put in your UEI or your cage code, et cetera, it'll go out to SAM and DSBS and pull that data back in. Some agencies also have that connection built in, but this is really important because if you're registering around supplier portals and you can go to our website and download a free ebook of like 100 plus supplier portals where you might want to be registered, when you're registered in there, many of them are going back to the source data about your business, which is in SAM and DSBS. So the dynamic small business search is where the excitement happens, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The last two things I wanted to just mention is that DSBS serves as the main input to your marketing assets. In project management, we basically talk about you have inputs, something happens, and then outputs, right? So you have inputs and outputs and the thing that happens in the middle. Well, for your marketing assets, when you think about a capability statement, a capability briefing deck, your website, your LinkedIn profile, your LinkedIn company page, or whatever the last one is I'm missing. I can't believe I'm missing the last one out of my head, but and I'm sure it's on the board behind me. Oh, DSBS. So that's the sixth one. Anyways, my point is it serves as an input. So when you fill out DSBS completely and you got your profile rocking, when you look to your capability statement, you don't have to create from scratch. You just fill in the information that's already in here. In DSBS, it's just a bunch of fields and it's kind of boring. When it goes to your capability statement, it's the same information, but now it looks a little bit more exciting and inviting to read. So keep that in mind. If you don't have that, then your marketing assets are not as strong as they could be. The last thing I want to talk about on how it's used, how DSBS is used, and this is really important to understand, is when a federal buyer, market researcher goes into the dynamic small business search looking for companies like yours, the first thing they do is they search for keywords, right? There might be other ways that they search, but primarily keyword, right? You can search on a NAICS code, but the NAICS codes are too broad compared to if I sit there and say, show me SharePoint migration, I don't have to type in 541.511 or 541.210 or whatever the various NAICS codes are. I can say SharePoint migration and DSBS will bring me back 100 or 500 firms. But if I say, show me SharePoint migration and show me if there's any HUBZone firms that do it, if I'm a market researcher doing that, then it returns those results. And by the way, the results are like 20 companies. And so it really is filtering down hundreds of thousands of small businesses down in to a small manageable list. that a market researcher can look at. So the first thing they do is they enter a keyword. The results come back, like I just described, and there's a capability narrative, which I'll describe in a minute. That narrative is basically your answer to, or your response to, what do you guys do? Right? And in there, when you look at it, if I search for SharePoint migration, that answer should tell me that you're a SharePoint company. If it does, then I'll go further down and I'm looking at experience. Do you have experience at the bottom of the DSBS profile that shows that not only you do SharePoint migrations, but you've been paid for it before? If you have that, then you get on a short list. The way that basically the market researchers are using DSBS is like a gold mine, if you think about it. There's gold in there for the agencies. There's small businesses that will be rock stars for those agencies to help them execute their mission. But the problem with gold is there's a lot of dirt around there, right? Dirt's still helpful, but it's not helpful when you're looking for gold. And so they go in, and these filtering activities I just described is removing the dirt in DSBS, if you will, to find the gold nuggets that could be really worthwhile to the agency and their requirements. You want to make sure you look more like gold than dirt, right? So dirt gets swiped one way and gold gets swiped the other way. You want to go that way, get on there so you're on that short list. And that's really what it is just shortlisting. So do me a favor, in the chat, tell me right now, just without going and looking, how strong do you think your DSBS profile is right now? And just put in strong, medium, or weak, right? And what I'm really looking for is if you don't have a strong profile, and if you haven't taken the time to create a strong profile, then how can you expect the hundreds of thousands of buyers, market researchers, et cetera, in the federal market to find you when that's their number one research tool? So just let me know. Let me and let yourself know that if you feel comfortable, right? If you don't worry about it. All right, let's talk about this 3 sections that are within DSBS. And I'll go through these pretty fast, but I also have a whole other course that kind of dives into it that's free, and you can find that out there. But the first section I want to talk about, I'm looking at my time, and I'm going to try to go through these fields pretty fast. So I'll do it at a fire hose so you can slow it down. First set of information within DSBS that you want to look at and make sure it is correct is called basic information, right? I call it the basic information, company information, if you will, an expanded company information. And the purpose, though, to keep in mind of basic information is they want to be able to see if your procurement ready, and they want to know how to contact you. That's the primary reason for basic information that you have in DSBS. They see your procurement readiness, how when they just look at you, right? And remember, they're making decisions in 1 second, 2 seconds. They're not taking a long time because they have a whole bunch of businesses. If they can't see in a couple of seconds that you're procurement ready and it's easy to contact you, they'll move on. So the problem with many small businesses, right? And you can go look at the data. The data just shares this with us. Is many small businesses have information that is missing or information that is weak. It's just, they put a couple of words in and that was it. So it's weak, or, it's incorrect, right? And it's not giving let me just check my profile. It's not giving the buyers a reason to select you, right? This is really important. When you go in, you're trying to get the buyer to select you like that gold and push you over. So there's a couple of pieces of information that I want you to think about. There's a field called current principals. And generally, this is where you would put in the owner of the company, the president of the company, any senior leadership people. Well, when you put that in, it gives the buyer confidence that, oh, hey, it's not some vague company. Here it is. Molly runs the company. She's the owner, and then here's somebody else. And you see those people's names. So that's called current principals. Make sure that information's in there. Another field that's vital, a couple of fields together, is the point of contact information. If they want to reach out to your business and ask you to come in, whether it's teammates or government, they need to have a person's name. So they need your first and last name, right? A person. And then they need an email address that has got 2 main criteria. First off, it's a person's email. It's not info@ or sales@, right? It's Neil McDonnell @, right? So they need a person's name. That gives them confidence. If it's info@, it makes them feel like if they send an email, it'll go into oblivion. The other side of the @ symbol, it needs to be a real domain. So govconchamber.com as an example, compared to Gmail or Hotmail or AOL or whatever's out there, right? If they see that, it doesn't give them a warm and fuzzy that your company is procurement ready. If you don't even have a domain that you can use for your email address, then maybe you belong subcontracting and these agency buyers don't need to talk with you. You're off the list, right? So pay attention to the contact person's information. The next one that's down from that are your websites. There's 2 fields that are websites for your company. You can just make them the exact same. One of them is in SAM and one of them is DSBS, right? And they sit right on top of each other in the DSBS profile. Here's the problem. The tool is not a smart, intelligent tool. If the URL is not exactly matching your URL, then it will not go through. It'll error out, 404 errors, etc. All you have to do is go to your profile, click on the URL, and if it errors out, go fix it, right? The common cause is either it's missing HTTPS completely, or your website on DSBS says HTTP, but on your website, it actually is HTTPS as a secured one. One more thing about that is if your website is not HTTPS and you're trying to deal with a federal government who is hyper concerned about cybersecurity and the security of their environments, why would they click on a website that doesn't have an S at the end of that HTTP, letting them know it is a secure website, right? To a degree, secure. So make sure you go in and look at that. First off, just make sure it even works. Farther down on the basic information, the last 3 I want to share here, there's a credit card field that says, do you accept credit cards? And there's a yes and a no. So many of us leave it as no because that's the default. But the reality is you should put it as yes, because if you say no, the question is accepts credit cards. If you can't accept credit cards, then how can you accept $1 million contract, right? And the reality is, of course, you can accept credit cards. You just give the number to the bank and they'll do the work, right? It's not hard. And no one is forcing you to accept the credit card. You're just saying, I accept the credit card. This is a subliminal thing that gets you swiped away with the dirt compared to pulled to the right with gold. When you say that you accept credit cards, you have yes there, it means just subliminally that you're procurement ready. NAICS codes, it's really important to go down to the basic information on DSBS. Make sure you've got at least 10 NAICS codes. Make sure they're all kind of related. If they're sporadic and all around, then it doesn't give the buyer a warm and fuzzy that you're an expert at what you do. You want to go in and have a core competency, right? A clear, concise offer. When you have that core competency, let's say cybersecurity, then you start finding NAICS codes that are around that, and you're not doing construction and this and that, right? I have a whole training on how do you go find your competitor NAICS codes and use that as a way to learn. How do you go in and see all these different agencies that you might want to support? How are they buying it? It doesn't matter what NAICS code you think is right. It matters what NAICS code they use to buy the products you sell or the services you sell. But 10 is a good number. You can have more, but I certainly wouldn't say less, because if I see less, I feel like you haven't taken the time to truly research how your buyer buys and which NAICS codes they use. The last one I want to share just on the basic information are non-federal certifications. This is a field in there where it's right above your capability narrative, and you can put in things like, PMP or ITIL. You can put in ISO certifications or CMMI. You can weave those into the narrative, but when you put it into this field that says non-federal certifications, this is a marketing tool. Keep in mind, DSBS is a marketing tool. When you put them in there and they're coming down through through your profile and they see those on the left-hand side as they're coming down, it gives them a warm and fuzzy that you have a stronger procurement readiness. Oh, look at that. They're ITIL or they're ISO or they're CMMI or whatever organizational certifications or even personnel certifications. You're just saying, hey, these are non-federal certifications, and it drives toward it, CISSP, et cetera. There's a section called business type. This is a percentage field where most of us leave it either blank or 100% services. And my recommendation is, no matter what you are, product, manufacturing, or service, put in 10% R&D and like 90% services, as an example. Something that says R&D. That way, if somebody comes in and they're looking for firms that say they do research and development, all of you do research and development. If somebody says, I'll give you $1 million to figure out how to clean toilets better, right? Whatever it is. But if somebody hits that checkbox that says, only show me small businesses that say they do R&D, well, just put in 10% R&D and 8 or 90% services, and you'll get found on that chance. The last one really quickly on SAM, and this is an important one. This is in SAM, but it's part of your overall profile. There's something called disaster support. I can't remember the exact name, but basically it says, do you want to be contacted if there's work related to disasters? Go in and say yes and everywhere, right? Some people say no, which means you don't get contacted during the disaster when the government is spending billions. Some people put yes, and in California only. Look, if somebody's going to pay you to go across the country 5 times your rate to do what you do, you're going to do it, right? So just The idea is you want to be contacted and then have the opportunity to reject an offer or an opportunity rather than never be invited to the party, right? So that's just basic information. I'm going to pick up speed here because I got a lot. I got a few minutes left, but this next main sections you want to pay attention to is the most important for visibility as it relates to a small business in the federal government, in particular with the dynamic small business search tool. And so these are keywords and capability narratives. There are 3 fields that get you found. When the buyer searches on a keyword like SharePoint, the tool has indexed and searches these 3 fields called capability narrative, special equipment, and manufacturing. I think I call it special equipment narrative. And then the third field is actually called keyword. Ironically, the keyword field is the least important. Your least important keywords should go down there. Your most important keywords should go up into the field called capability narrative. Your top 10 keywords that you want to be found on should be woven into a narrative. It is a response to somebody saying, tell me about your company. You can think of it like an elevator pitch. So when you look at your narrative right now in DSBS, does it look like an elevator pitch, or does it look like a whole bunch of keywords thrown at the bottom of a blog or something, right? It should be a narrative. If somebody finds your profile, that narrative is telling the story, an elevator pitch, again, if you will. I call it, you want to keep it at like a wedding level response. Think about who's seeing that first narrative. Typically, it's market researchers who are like small business professionals, the acquisition personnel, people who are not as familiar with the work that you do. That's that first field, capability narrative. It has 1,000 characters, and more often than not, people have like 250 used. That means 75% of the available space is not being used. You're not being found because you're leaving out 75% of your story. Tell your story. The second field I mentioned was special equipment and manufacturing. I call this a capability 2, or a special equipment narrative, because it's just another 1,000 character field. It's a legacy field from way back when, but it's indexed. And if you put a narrative in there, you can do it. I want you to put in there the response to tell me about your company. But in this case, it's a conference level response. Imagine if you're at a cyber conference and your company does cyber and somebody says, tell me what you do. You're not going to talk below them. You're not going to worry about not having jargon. So you can put more heavy jargon in there. This answer is for the program office. When you go in and talk to the IT department, they say, tell me about your company, right? You want to have that answer at a little higher level of sophistication than the first narrative. Again, it's 1,000 characters. And the thing about keywords is if your top 10 keywords are used in the first narrative, your second set of keywords, let's say the next 10, are used in the second narrative, special equipment narrative. And then the third field, the least important one, is called keyword. That's 525 characters. You can have 25 keywords in there. And so any keyword that did not go into the 2 narratives above, put them down here. Don't replicate anything you did above, because the tool is at least smart enough to search through all those fields, right? But you want to go in and make sure that you're putting in as many keywords as somebody who wants to buy from you would possibly put into search, right? So make sure you go through that exercise with your company. Make sure you go look at your profile. The last part I want to talk about, and this is really goes with the idea of the narratives above. If the narratives above are telling the story of what do you do in the capability narrative, et cetera, then the references and performance history section at the very bottom of your DSBS profile, this is demonstrating that you've been paid for the core competency, right? So one is saying, hey, we do this. And the performance history is saying people have trusted us with their requirements and helping them in their business. So really quickly, I just want to talk about the fields you can use in a minute. But when you're putting past performance in, you want to put in only federal if you've got a lot of federal. But if you don't have a lot of federal, it's totally okay to use state and local, commercial, and even you can get a little bit creative with saying, hey, I've worked on this, and put a little parentheses and say self or something. You're just trying to communicate that you got it. I've done a whole training on this where how do you put experience down when you just started your business? Well, use your personal experience and make sure you communicate it in there, but use your personal experience and you're showing that I'm the expert. Your audience is going to be other small businesses. And remember that you can put in experience that is prime or subcontracting. So I have people who've done a ton of subcontracting. That's really valuable. And now the government has really stepped up their respect for the fact that you've subcontracted with their agency. It's the same. It's kind of the same as priming, right? So make sure you put those in. There's 5 fields I want to mention really quick. The first one is the name field. It's at the top. The important thing here is to make sure it is a clear title, not the contract title, what's in the contract award you get or the PWS. Make it a clear title that is related to what you're doing. Again, this is a marketing tool. It is not a proposal that you're sending in and it's all signed to law. It's a marketing asset. DSBS is just a marketing tool. So you put in the title that most relates to what you do, especially if you get a contract title that says support services. Well, that doesn't tell the people anything. But if you improve it and say SharePoint migration, 100,000 users, that tells them a lot. It's a marketing name. So you want to make sure it's hitting their head and they're like, oh, that's good work. Oh, that's good work. Tell me more. It's 80 characters. And this is why I say the first field, the name field, which has the most characters, 80, should be the description of the work. The second field below that is called contract. Don't put a contract number in there. Instead, use acronyms for your customer. An example would be DOD, space pipe, space US Air Force, USAF, space pipe, space AMC, right? So that tells people right away, oh, they're doing DOD and Air Force and, oh, down in AMC, right? There's only 20 characters, which is why I'm saying use acronyms. But when you do it like that, it makes it really easy for them to see it. Go, oh, I see where you worked. I see where you worked. And you're trying to remove the friction. Further down, you got start and end dates. Make sure you add those in. There's values. Quick statement about the value is make sure that you do not round your numbers. Put the exact number in because the government is, it's a flag when they just see numbers rounded up to the nearest number. Then they're thinking you're just guessing or something. And make sure you're only using dollars. Don't worry about the decimal point or the pennies at the end. Use dollar signs and commas. This is not a numbers field, it's a text field. So put a dollar sign in, add the commas so it looks clean, like $450,000 and $200 or something. The last one is it has a contact and a phone number. Do not put people's names in there, not even your own. Just put available upon request, right? On all of your things, and that'll fill it out completely. The dynamic small business search tool, it's the most important tool in your toolbox as a small business in the federal market. I encourage you strongly to take 60 seconds, right, to go check your profile and see if it's complete. If the profile is not complete, then you're invisible to the buyer. You don't want that, and I certainly don't want that for you. So go check your profile out today. If you found value in my trainings, do me a favor, become a sustaining member of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. And if your company's already getting traction in the federal space and you're looking to go to the next level, I've got a 90-day BD Accelerator workshop and be happy to talk with you about it. Reach out to me on LinkedIn to learn more about that. And remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.